Hello everyone, it's your friend of a friend. I don't know what's not clicking for Latinos for Trump with how bad it's getting, but we're going to have to talk about it. And when I say bad, I'm not just talking about Alligator Alcatraz, which we will cover in this video. But I really don't think that Latinos really understand how nasty things are going to get for them. I said it in the last video and I'm going to say it again in this video. When this demonic entity is through with his term and the aftermath really settles, they do not understand how much the blame will be placed on their shoulders for all the things that are going wrong in this country. And the fix is already in. You notice that the ICE agents' faces and names are kept hidden for their protection, yet yours, Latinos, are on full display, and you've been called out from the protests to the courtrooms.
Yes, we got Ortega right here. Damn, we got a Garcia right here too, bro. This who right here, what is that? Nicholus? He's so new, he just had to chalk it on his hat. All right, and then we got Alvarez, and then we got Perez.
Look at your last names. Look at your kids. Look at your last names.
Where you coming
Look at your last names. Regalado, Bermudez, Gonzalez.
And this is done because when all of this finally dies down, the books are written and the movies are made, the narrative will be spun that they harmed their own people. Do you know how I know this? Because anytime the black community speaks about slavery, they never fail to run in and try to redirect the conversation and say, it was Africans that sold you to white men, why don't you talk about that? As if this is some bombshell revelation. And they do that because they hate when you talk about their participation, exploitation, and generational profit. African Americans know what Africans did to them, and that's why there's a divide between us to this day. But you don't get to come in and change the subject. And just so you can see how the narrative is shifting in real time, take a look at this post. It says people 100 years from now are going to be so effing confused about how a whole ass country fell to this melanoma. And to that I say no ma'am, because it was a woman that made this post. So I get this statement is more figuratively speaking, like Rome fell to Caesar or Germany fell for the mustache, but I'm gonna need her to be more specific because a whole demographic of people gave a resounding hell no by not voting for this man, and I would appreciate the distinction. You see the subtle shift here. I just had to include this because I'm hearing and seeing the shift a lot lately. All this we when the official language is English. Please leave we out of it. Whew, I just had to get that off my chest. Now let's get back to ICE trying to maintain anonymity.
You have ICE Director Todd Lyons noting, I'm sorry if people are offended by ICE agents wearing masks, but I am not going to let my officers and agents go out there and put their lives on the line. We've seen so much danger presented to them, their family on the line, because people don't like what immigration enforcement is. Congresswoman, I would say it's not that people don't like what immigration enforcement is. They don't like what immigration enforcement is doing and how it is treating American citizens. And the fact that you have to cover your face to do that job, what does that say to you, Congresswoman?
Well, you're exactly right. I think what's happening with these agents that are masked and unidentifiable, it's making us all less safe. People do not know the difference between if somebody is legitimately there to carry out law enforcement activities or a kidnapper. We've already seen incidences where there's imposters and that's happening. It's also going to, I think, erode trust between the public and law enforcement. And look, if local law enforcement can show their face, can have an identifying badge, then they should be able to as well. And I wonder if there's something more to it. And part of that, I think, is making sure we can hold people accountable. We've seen the videos of them abusing their power and abusing people. And we have to be able to see who they are to hold them accountable.
Or how about they voted in record numbers for this? They'll have all their little graphs and pie charts ready, and your face is out here celebrating this man, singing worship songs and expressing your love to him.
President Trump, we love you. We will support you all the way to the end. Thank you for everything you've been doing.
We have a message for you, President Trump, from all the way down from the RGV 956. Latinos for Trump here representing. We've been with you since 2016, co-founded Latinos for Trump. We pray for you, and it's time to what? Finish
Latinos for Trump, y'all are a really weird bunch, because who does all of this for a person that they don't personally know, let alone a politician? I didn't even see black people go this hard when Obama was in office. Anyway, stick around to the end and I'm going to show you the immediate ways Latinos for Trump will be scapegoated Not just the ones that voted for him, but everyone, because no one's going to make the distinction. And this is not to scare people or fearmonger. I just want you to keep your guard up and use discernment at all times. So if we all remember, a couple of months ago, Trump was floating the idea of reopening Alcatraz.
The president announced that he is directing his government to reopen and expand Alcatraz. Here's a live look at that former island prison. Now, the president said the prison will hold America's most ruthless and violent offenders, and that it's time to lock up the most dangerous criminals and keep them far away from anyone they could harm.
We all thought he was having a senior moment. He seems to have a lot of those lately, but no one calls it out. But even Gavin Newsom thought it was just another stunt.
Looks like it's Distraction Day again in Washington, D.C.
Alcatraz closed back in March of 1963. The primary reason? High operating costs and significant structural issues caused by the harsh environment out on the bay. Alcatraz has been run by the National Park Service since the 70s and is designated as a historic landmark.
Fast forward to July, and the clown posse decided to come to Florida and tour the facility named Alligator Alcatraz, that a lot of people renamed Alligator Auschwitz because the rest of us couldn't ignore how similar the setup resembled to the concentration camps of Auschwitz, Germany.
This is not a nice business. I guess that's the concept. If snakes are fast, but alligators we're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison, how to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%, okay? Not a good thing.
And this witch Laura Loomer posted, "Alligator lives matter. The good news is alligators are guaranteed at least 65 million meals if we get started now." Now, it's been reported that there are roughly 20 million undocumented Latinos in this country, but 65 million includes legal Latinos in this country, men, women, and children that are, again, legally in this country. She and a lot of people in that party want this as your fate. And now that you know all the egregious things that he has in store for undocumented people in this country, you are still online and in my comment section saying you will support this. And mind you, this lady has the ear of the president. Y'all should be livid that someone would joke about your life like this, but a lot of y'all are still clapping and cheering like this is a game. Well, go on and keep playing while the ship is going down. And all of this has brought your people and other immigrants here to a horrifying page out of a dark part of American history, an atrocity that was committed against my people.
I've been collecting little pencils like this. I've seen alligators on jars. I've seen alligator ashtrays, and I've seen them depicted with kids in it. And I was wondering why the children would be there. As a matter of fact, this particular pencil sharpener, this is a pencil sharpener or a pencil holder with a black head of a baby sitting out of its mouth. I didn't pay any attention. I have been collecting for quite a few years, and I have the posters and things like that about different things. And then one day I was down in Florida. I'd gone down with my wife, and I took a trip for myself off to the Wild Blue Yonder, going out to hunt artifacts. And in my quest to hunt artifacts, I came upon a pawn shop in Sanford, Florida. In the pawn shop was a gentleman who owned it. They went and got him and told him I was there, and I wanted to buy some of the shackles he had hanging around the walls. I asked him, could I buy them? He said no. He didn't want to sell anything. He just wanted me to see it. Then we began to talk. And I asked him, I said, look, please let me buy something. I got to take something from here. He says, no. He says, I don't want to sell anything. He said, but I'm going to the back and I'll sit down. Meanwhile, he came out and came back out and he began to talk to me. He said, he said, you probably don't know this. He said, but years ago, he said, my grandfather, before he died, told me of the things they would do. He said he would go down. He said his grandfather said they would go down and they would take babies with them. I said, what do you mean babies? He says, well, let me tell you. He said the slaves who had babies, they would steal the babies during the course of the day, sometimes when the mothers weren't watching. I said, what do you mean babies? I said, you mean babies like 5 or 6 years old? He says, no. These babies, some would be infants. Some would be a year old. He said some would be toddlers. He said they would grab these children and take them down to the swamp and leave them in pens like little chicken coops. They would go down there at night, take these babies and tie them up because they hunted the big bull alligators. These big bull alligators were not raised on the farms. They were in the wild. These alligators would weigh 6, 7, 800 pounds. Those are the ones they wanted. They would skin them, make the wallets, get the meat, do different things with them. He said, but what they were doing was tie them up, put a rope around their neck and around their torso, around here, and tie it tight. He said, the baby, I said, well, what would the babies be doing? He said, well, my grandfather said they'd be screaming. He said, what would you do? He said, just let them scream. He said, what they would do, it would help them to chum the water. He said, when they would throw the babies in tied to this rope, he said, in a matter of minutes, he said, the alligators were on them. He said the alligators would clamp his jaws on that child. As a matter of fact, once he clamped on him, he was really swallowed. You couldn't see anything but the rope. And we would pull the alligator in and tie his nose and hit him in the head with an axe, a pickaxe. He said we would then drag him to the shore. We'd drag him to the shore and leave him lay, and we would do it again, maybe 2 or 3 times a night. I said, so what do you mean? He said, well, yeah, they were taking these babies and killing them for alligator bait. I said, so all these things I've been collecting, are really, really something that I can really talk about and say they're of a truth by what you say? He said, I'm telling you, he said, nobody wants to talk about it. He said, I'm only telling you because you're here. I may never hear from you again. He said, but these things actually depict the acts that they did to slave babies back in the Bayou country and down the South. They did this. They hunted alligators with these babies. That's why they call alligator bait.
And this is why they don't want the history taught in the schools, because of the pure evil and savagery. How do you treat innocent babies like this? There's also an old article that reads, did you know in Florida, during slavery, slave masters would take an enslaved black child, tie a rope around his or her legs, put them in the water, and use them for alligator bait? 2 movies in the 1900s, Alligator Bait and Gator and the Pickaninny, both showed and proved this. Because when the resurgence of this information came out, they tried to deny it. But there were movies depicting it, tons of memorabilia like postcards, toys, candy, and clothing. But this stuff is also held at the Jim Crow Museum, so it is documented. So here's another article that depicts everything we were just talking about earlier, but I'm not going to read it. I actually just want to focus on the last couple sentences of this article. But feel free to pause it if you like, but the end of the article states, a hungry-looking alligator leering at a bug-eyed black baby. The ad read, a dainty little morsel. For decades, the popular candy was referred to as N-word babies. The name was later changed to Nibs and is still on the market today. So it's clear that that's what Nibs candy is short for. Yet they constantly tell us to get over it when they haven't, and they have this weird bloodlust to relive it, which brings us back to Alligator Auschwitz.
Very soon, this facility will house some of the most menacing migrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet.
That's what President Trump said Tuesday while visiting the now highly controversial Everglades facility. But state documents show otherwise. This 37-page document, when talking about facilities, says an unaccompanied minor under 18, persons over 70, females with children, and family groups would not be placed in hold rooms. And juveniles, babies, pregnant women, and others for whom it is medically necessary should have regular access to snacks, milk, juice, etc.
You heard them say it. Elderly, expectant mothers, and children will be sent here, awaiting deportation. But he just said the place was for so-called hardened criminals.
Most menacing migrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet.
His core group of maggots immediately got to hateful business to, of course, profit off the pain and misery of others. The Republicans created merchandise on their official website. Other people from the base also put out their merchandise as well. Even online store Etsy is under fire for allowing vendors to sell this on their website. Clothing apparel with pictures depicting people getting eaten by alligators. Would you look at this? They even have little onesies for their babies. I guess it's never too early to indoctrinate little ones with hate and evil. Now, the selling of merchandise, where did we see this before? And even more history is repeating itself as indigenous tribal lands that Native Americans own and live on are being snatched up and used for these purposes. They have spoken out against it, and again, they are being ignored.
There needs to be some sort of respect towards the tribes that are putting tax dollars into the Florida economy. Unfortunately, we send those people lots of money, and what are they doing to us? How dare they? How dare they This is not their land. This is our land. This is native land. This is Seminole, Miccosukee, and indigenous people who are working, who are living, who are living our lives here.
The indigenous people who live on the land have protested and warned the government that this area is dangerous, the weather is too unpredictable, and the grounds aren't sustainable to hold that many people in this area, and they still won't listen.
Well, this evening, questions over the operation at the site dubbed Alligator Alcatraz. There are already concerns about flooding following 2 days of consistent rain.
Transportation workers digging holes across the main entrance. They say a sign is going up calling this detention facility Alligator Alcatraz. During and since the president's visit, as expected in summer months, those afternoon thunderstorms easily create flooding, and in swampy areas like this one, plenty of mud. Already reports of flooding inside the facility, despite what the head of Florida's emergency management said yesterday.
It is a fully aluminum frame structure rated for winds of 110 miles an hour or a high-end Category 2.
Today, a spokesperson for the Florida's emergency management told us vendors went back and tightened any seams at the base of the structures that allowed water intrusion during the heavy storm, which they say was minimal.
And since there's no oversight and no accountability for this administration, because their only tactics are to lie, deny, and blame Biden, how do we know these people are making it safely to their countries? We are just supposed to take this administration at their word?
Not bloody likely.
On Thursday, a group of Florida state Democratic lawmakers were denied entry when they went to inspect the state-operated facility. Just like members of Congress who have been attempting to do the same at these federal facilities, these state lawmakers are allowed by federal law to provide oversight. According to the lawmakers, they were told they could not come in because of safety reasons. They were not told what those reasons were, and more importantly, if the migrants that were inside were also subject to those same concerns of safety.
And I know that there's still people listening who still won't care because if only they did it the right way. Well, a lot of people have. They are showing up to their immigration hearings and are still being snatched up as they leave the courthouse. Do these people deserve to be in Alligator Alcatraz? And remember, he's also trying to take away citizenship from the people who did things the right way, who attended the hearings, paid their dues financially and with their time, and are still at risk at losing their citizenship.
Because you are a naturalized U.S. citizen.
I am.
Does this strike some fear in you?
How could it not? You know, I'm not alone. There are 24 million of me in this country that are naturalized. You said 53% of the total amount of immigrants. And I think it just keeps bringing it back to the idea that this was never about illegals, about criminals. It was about who we don't want in this country. Because the amount of people that we're seeing rounded up, you know, at immigration courts, they're there doing it correctly. And they're being rounded up and taken by ICE officers. Then we're talking about, does your birthright citizen count? You know, does that count? And then you talk about people like me who are naturalized. I came here as a student. I had a student visa. Then I had an H-1B visa. Then I had a green card, temporary green card, then a green card. Then I applied for citizenship. It is no joke. The common argument for undocumented immigrants in this country is why don't they just come here legally? And the legal way is actually very hard. It is expensive. It is hard. It is complicated. We don't have nearly enough ways to come here legally. There's a lot of people who come in crisis and then think, okay, I'll just get my things organized once I'm here and my family is safe. I did it completely legally, and I can tell you it took years. It took thousands and thousands of dollars, and it took time. You're constantly jumping through new hoops to prove that you're not a problem. And now they're saying you did it entirely legally, and we can still take it from you because we're going to decide who's American, we're going to decide who counts, and we're going to decide what the rules are after the fact. And that's a little bit like changing the rules of the game after you've played the game.
And to any undocumented person that is listening to this and thinks, well, I have family and friends, I'll ride this out until his term is up, I wouldn't risk it. And it's not because I don't want you here, it's because I don't want you here. These people are playing a dirty game, and it's better to go on your own terms. Because to be snatched up and detained in one of these places, and you're not even guaranteed to be sent to your place of origin, or worse, separated from your kids if you have them, why risk it? And if you made it this far in the video, I promise to show you just how diabolical it's about to get. So comedian Ralph Barbosa made a joke about immigrants and ICE, and just listen to the audience reaction and then I'll be back.
I don't know if this is true, but I heard a rumor that there's like an ICE hotline. Like you can call ICE, and if you give up an illegal immigrant, they'll give you like $1,000. I called them right before this show. It's tax season, I'm sorry, you know? They were like, there's an illegal immigrant there? I was like, there's gotta be like 20 at least. I said, all I know is you better bring 20K cash at least.
So again, I understand that this is meant to be just a joke, but if you think this isn't going to happen on a large scale, you better think again. This man has cut so many jobs and new positions aren't opening and the market is tanking. People are losing their health care, food benefits, and they will start to turn on undocumented friends, family, and strangers too. Latinos for Trump, this man has shown you repeatedly who he is. It is time to believe him. The fact that he is trying to bring slavery back into the conversation should have everyone outraged. I don't care who you are. Sometimes I can't even believe all of this is real and really happening in our time. Friends, let me know in the comments how you feel about all of this. I look forward to reading and responding to your comments. Until next time, everyone, please stay safe out there. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.